Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Monday. I know it's Tuesday, but it feels like Monday. It's been Monday since yesterday, and now we're into Monday part 2. Yeah. Oh man, it's crazy. Hello and good morning. We've got lots of stuff. Of course, Tuesday means Brad Keithley's coming in from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets to give us the truth. We should call them Truth Tuesdays. That's what we should call it. Truth Tuesdays. And baby, sometimes the truth hurts. You know it does. Sometimes it's going to be, but we got to know. We got to know what's going on. So Brad Keithley's coming in to talk with us about some of the big things going on in the legislature right now, including this latest article from Zach Fields, this opinion piece. I can't believe it. I mean, I should believe it, but I don't. How does his constituency look him in the eye? Anyway, we're going to talk about that and more with Brad Keithley. In hour 2, I will have a few things to say, as you know I do sometimes. And then we'll be finishing it up with Chris Story, who's going to soothe our savage wounds and give us a positivity boost for the remainder of the week. All right, you ready? Whew, man, that's what it feels like today. Today, taking a sip from a fire hose. That's what it's all about. Let's get with it. Let's get to it. Let's jump in. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. He's with us right now. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Michael, I'm doing great today. I like that red shirt.
Yeah, thank you. It's I play Dungeons and Dragons. It's my Dungeons and Dragons shirt. I feel pretty good about it. All right.
Does that psych your opponents out? That red, that
yes.
Vibrating red.
Yeah, that big vibrating red with the dragons. And just here to do what I say, or I'll sick the dragon on you. It's I should wear this into the legislature. All right, that's what I should do. Just wear this right into the legislature.
Yeah, not when I'm sipping coffee. Don't do that to me. When I have a mouthful
that
of
almost spit coffee all over the keyboard. All right. Well, Brad, let's get to it. I mean, I hate to be the broken record, but boy, it's like, Lions, it's Groundhog Day again in the legislature, right? I mean, this is where we're at. Let's start off with the latest and greatest oil taxes. And boy, there's a lot of angst on the part of the right for Rob Yuntz. I mean, there was a whole thing. Dan Fagan wrote an article about how this is how republics die and all this kind of stuff. I mean, in his article about it. But there's, you have a finite resource that's owned by you, the people. You have a finite limited resource. Shouldn't you get the maximum yield out of that since it's only going to be here one time? I mean, I'm just asking as an owner, maybe we should do more, but I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I read Fagan's piece. It was Hillcorp's talking points. Somebody slipped him the bullet points and he just put words around it. So here's the deal to me with oil taxes. And keep in mind that I was a big proponent of SB 21, that I testified in favor of it. I helped draft part of it. I was a big defender of it in the referendum on it in the subsequent election cycle. And I've been a believer in it in terms of its ability to restart investment in Alaska. And it's proven to do that. But here's the problem. It's in the current environment where we have all this massive investment going on, and we have new production coming in, it's overshot the mark. You can tell that in two ways. And this is very simple, very, very simple. You can tell that in two ways. If you look at the fall revenue forecast, the fall revenue forecast projects big increases in production. Over the 10-year period covered by the forecast, projected production levels rise by over 35%, from 467,000 at the start to 640,000 at the end. But now let's look at the revenue side. Yep, we got big production coming up, right? Now let's look at the revenue side. Royalty revenues over that entire period only rise by 1%. Production's rising by 35%. Royalty revenues are only rising by 1%. The answer to that is a lot of the production, a lot of the increased production, most of the increased production is coming from federal lands, from which we don't get royalty. So what's going on is state lands, production from state lands is still staying relatively constant. The big rise is coming from federal production. So you would expect royalty to sort of stay where it is over that period. It only rises by 1%. But here's the big deal. And here's what Mike Schauer and Fagan and others on the right need to concentrate on. Over that same period, revenues from production. Now, production itself is rising by 35%, right? Revenues from production through the production tax are dropping by 30%, from $940 million at the start to $658 million at the end. And driven by that, overall unrestricted petroleum revenues also fall over the period. Production taxes, revenues from production taxes, which apply both to the state and to the federal lands. So we're not getting any problems with the federal lands. Production taxes apply to the federal lands. Production's increasing by 35%. Production taxes are dropping by 30%. There's another way to look at that. We don't have a gross revenue system, but you can calculate the percent take on the gross. And that's a fairly good measure of whether your production tax system how your production tax system is changing. So you can look back at the pre-ACES period, and we had about 17% from the gross. That's what the production tax generated, about 17% from the gross. During ACES, that jumped up to 32% from the gross. Bad, too much, and it disincentivized investment in the state. Dollars went elsewhere. During the first 10 years of SB 21, it came back down to about where it was pre-ACES, to about where it was in the old system, about 16% of the gross. And that's lasted for about 10 years. Now, when you look at the fall revenue forecast, it's dropping. The SB 21 stays in effect, but the revenue from the gross is dropping to about 12%. It's dropping by about 4%. What's going on is that in SB 21, the legislature put in a lot of incentives. They put it, for example, they have 1-year amortization. Usually when you have a tax code to encourage investment, you allow amortization over a shorter period than the life of the investment, right? So you allow amortization over 5 years, maybe, or 10 years.
Right.
And so you can amortize the capital over. SB 21 allows amortization over 1 year. So every dollar they put in investment is a credit against revenue. We also have we also instituted what's called GVR, gross value reduction. And that's on new oil from regions or from areas that hadn't previously been produced. That was an incentive to go out and develop additional oil. And that applies both to Prudhoe. I mean, there were areas in Prudhoe that hadn't been developed, and it applies to Willow and Pica and the others. The revenues the gross value reduction is you take 30% of your revenues off the top, exclude that, before you start calculating taxes, before you start calculating the revenues that are included in taxes. And then we've got the per barrel credits that are on top of that. All of those combined are hitting in a way in the current environment to reduce one more time or 15 more times, whatever it takes to get it through people's brains, to reduce production taxes by 30% over the 10-year period at a time when production volumes are increasing by 35%. SB 21 has the internal workings of SB 21 have sort of gone wrong. They're overcorrecting for the problems that we had
which historically in this
ACEs.
state we have a problem with, right? I mean, that was ELF and then ACEs, and then it always swings back one way or the other. For it, it's even for just a little bit, and then it runs off into the pucker brush in one side or the other. It seems like every time, where it's good for a finite period of time, and then it runs askew because we're trying to predict market behavior. And of course, all these oil companies, they've got a whole floor full of accountants and lawyers, and the state of Alaska has got 3 people auditing the books versus a whole fleet of accountants and lawyers. And so this is inevitably you have to come back and revisit it every handful of years, I think, to make it work.
Yeah, I don't think this is a way where the oil companies are cooking the books. This is the way SB 21 operates when you get in this environment. What we told Alaskans in 2013 and 2014 is help us increase investment. What the industry told Alaskans was help us increase investment by reducing your take from production taxes. Take a hit from production taxes. Help us. And when volumes increase, that'll result in investment. It'll result in volume increase. When that happens, you'll benefit too. We'll share in the benefit. What's happening now that we've gotten to that point is the exact reverse. Production taxes or production volumes are blowing out, 35% increase, but production taxes, revenues from production taxes are dropping. So when I see people like Shower and others, knee jerking the industry reaction to taxes, oh my God, bad, horrible, we're going to leave, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. When I see them knee jerking the industry reaction, I get upset. Because that's not what you should be doing. You should be looking at the numbers. And I've written about the numbers. We got them in the Alaska landmine column. You and I have talked about the numbers on the show before. When the Fall Revenue Sources book first came out, I was just shocked at how much at what was going on with production taxes. You've got to look at the numbers and you've got to look at what's going on. Don't knee jerk a reaction. Now, Wielechowski, I'm not a big fan of the way Wielechowski's proposing to fix it with the limitation on production tax on the production credits, and with the limitation on the related limitation on deduction of capital investments. That's a matter of revenue design. We talk a lot about revenue design on the show. That is revenue design. He's trying to design how to get $400 million. And that's the design he's using. I'm not a big fan of that design because I don't think that's getting at the heart of the problem, which is the amortization and the GVRs. Credits are part of the problem. Per barrel credits are part of the problem. But I don't think that fix is getting at it. But the number's about right. I mean, I've done these numbers a lot. And if you look at gross, if you look at share of gross, and if you look at what would happen if we didn't have these deductions going on in the way we're having them go on in the next 10 years, over the next 10 years. About $400 million is the right number. You and I have talked about this on the show a lot.
Right.
But so I just don't give me your knee jerk, talking points from Hillcorp in the case of closing the Hillcorp loophole, or from the oil companies in the case of the production tax fix. Look at the goddamn numbers and see for yourself what's going on. And what's going on is, now that we've made all these, now that we've developed a tax code that has encouraged making all these investments, now that we're getting to the point where those pay off in terms of increased production taxes are going down. And that's not what was intended in 2013 and 14. That's not what was told Alaskans in 2013 and 2014. And that's not what should be happening, consistent with the constitutional obligation that says maximize revenue for the benefit of Alaskans.
Right. And this is what we've been saying for a long time. There's money on the table and we need to be looking at it. But the second we start talking about it, immediately the right is activated over the fact that we shouldn't do anything more with the oil companies. But we're leaving money on the table. There's money on the table, and we are the owners. And again, it's a finite resource. 60 seconds, Brad.
Well, I mean, and people talk about consistent tax code. We need consistency in the tax. Well, this isn't consistent.
Right.
The fact that we're losing revenue at a time production is increasing, the fact that our take of gross revenues are going down, that's not consistent. The provisions that are causing that are consistent with what happened before, but you have to look at the environment in which those provisions are applying. And it's resulting in a significant, 30% drop in production tax revenues is huge.
Right.
And that's what's going on.
Yeah. How can we have more production yet less revenue in the other end? And that's the kind of the continual question that we should be asking ourselves. There's a lot of factors there, but this taxation is definitely part of it. All right. We're going to continue on here. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We got more coming up. Number 2, dead ahead. We'll be back with more. Don't go anywhere. We will return in just a moment.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. You're going to have to rein it in, Brad. You said GD. He said...
Uh-oh.
I don't want to visit from the FCC. All right. So just keep it cautious. Keep it down on the down low. All right. Yeah, no, this is some crazy stuff. And again, the fact that you, as an oil and gas company attorney, former guy in the industry, is saying there's still money on the table ought to raise the eyebrows for people who are like, no, the oil cut, everything, we've got to be paying attention to this. This is a deal, and it could again help with some of the issues that we're having as well. And as in citizen owners, we should be getting, the Constitution says that we need to get the maximum yield. That's what we're supposed to be getting as owners out of this whole deal.
And people say, taking this money away from the oil companies, they'll leave. They won't.
No.
They're
making more money than God out here. Are you kidding me?
All we're talking about is maintaining the same level of gross revenues. I know we're not on a gross revenue system, but our rate design, the way we design the net profits tax, produces a certain level of take from the gross. And you can see that consistency over time. You could see it before ACEs. You could see it much higher during ACEs, the consistency. You can see it coming back down in SB 21. And that's a good measure of whether, you have a consistent result from the tax code. And our take from the gross is falling. And it's falling. It cannot be more obvious at a time when production volumes are going up by 35%. Production tax revenues are going down by 30%. It can't be more obvious that something's gone wrong, and that the shares have flipped in a way so that Alaskans are not getting the same share that they thought they were getting out of SB 21 and they got out of the first 10 years of SB 1. So for legislators, I sort of understand the knee jerk against taxes. I sort of get that. But for legislators to not look at the numbers and understand that we're not asking for more, we're just asking for the same share that we got in the first 10 years. We're trying to restore the results we had in the first 10 years. For legislators to not get that
Right. The balance. Right. It's
Doesn't
got to be
doesn't
equitable.
doesn't reflect well on them.
Right. It's got to be equitable in both directions. And that's been part of the problem. Again, the challenge. It has fallen out of sync, and we need to get, we need to go get her done, so to speak. All right. We are about 90 seconds. We're about 90 seconds before we hit this. Give me a tease for number 2, Brad. What
Well, number two is it's going to be another rant on, or another discussion. There we go, discussion.
rant? You're ranting. It's fine. It's okay. We embrace the rant here.
On defined benefits in K through 12, and
Yeah.
And the press for additional spending in those areas.
Yeah. Well, I'm starting to wonder, quite honestly, and I guess we can bring this up. And yes, thank you, Anthony. Anthony says, "Oh, please, you've heard worse in the checkout line of Fred Meyers, and you know it." When Brad had the slippage there, yes, he's right. I have heard worse in the checkout line of Fred Meyers. I've heard things when I was like, "Man, I don't have any kids around here, do I?" Because dang. Anyway, in the fact that I'm starting to wonder if this is just all kabuki theater, where they want to lay all this at the governor's feet. They know they don't have the money to do it, but they want to lay it at his feet and try and make him the bad guy in this situation. That they sold a big pack of stuff knowing that it was undeliverable. And I'm starting to wonder if that might be the case. And you can comment on that probably by the end of it. I'll bring it back up, Brad. So we'll get stuff going here. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Let's get back to it. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube-y things, and just do it. Like it. I mean it.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. All right. Don't be mean. That's where it's at. All right. Number 2 of the weekly top 3. I mean, it seems like this is just a repeat from last week and the week before that, and last year. And God, I mean, maybe. So number 2 is defined benefits and K-12 spending. Brad, the gift that just keeps on giving. What's happening?
Oh, it is a repeat. It's probably a repeat from every show we've done for the last 10 years. But you see all these articles about both K-12 and about K-12 and about defined benefits. I mean, just looking over the range of newspapers in the state, from the Ketchikan Daily News, Representative Bynum, a Republican, proposes a one-time BSA hike. Down on the Kenai, you've got Assembly calls on state to boost school funding. Also from the Kenai, Soldotna joins call for increased school funding. I mean, you got everybody
change, right? With no policy change. Yeah, exactly.
Everybody and his brother out there pushing for increased K through 12 funding. And I can sort of get the need for that. I can sort of see the inflation argument around that. But where's the revenues going to come from? It is the height of fiscal irresponsibility to be facing the kind of budgets that we're facing, the kind of budget deficits that we're facing. And you can see them over the next 10 years. You don't just, you can see it next year. You can see it the year following that. But if you look at the fall revenue forecast, you can see it over the entire 10-year period, in significant part due to the drop in production tax revenues. You can see that the deficits that are sitting out there. And in that context, to be pushing for substantial increases in spending, keep in mind that HB 69 has a $330 million plus or minus price tag next year, but there are 2 additional increments of increases. Then it's automatically adjusted by inflation.
Right.
By the time you get to the end of the 10-year period, SB 69 is $1 billion a year. And for legislators to be pushing that before they have the revenues in place to pay for it is just fiscally irresponsible. I mean, It's Congress. I mean, it's just like Congress. Let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. In the case of Congress, and we'll keep borrowing and we'll keep borrowing and we'll keep borrowing. In Alaska, it's let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. But there's no borrowing that power that sits behind that enables you to balance it out that way. And so it's let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. Let's keep growing the deficit. Let's keep growing the deficit. Let's keep growing the deficit. It is fiscally irresponsible. And at some point you see Kenai, you see Soldotna joins call for increased school funding. You see Kenai Assembly calls on state to boost increased funding. You say Ketchikan Republican Jeremy Bynum proposes a one-time BSA hike. All of these people who are pushing for increased spending, not telling us how they're going to pay for it, not talking about the revenue side, at least at the same time, if not in front, to sort of set the stage for the increased spending. All of these people pushing for increased spending and not talking about revenue at the same time is just very frustrating. And it's fiscally irresponsible. We're just going deeper and deeper and deeper. The state's going deeper and deeper and deeper into an unsustainability hole that I'm not sure how we ever get out of. We keep going. Defined benefits has its own bizarreness.
Yeah, I know the New Reason Foundation commentary on this is like, hello, has anybody been paying attention to this? There are other states that have defined benefits that have worse employment retention problems than we do here. The Reason Foundation brought that up. Like, hey, you saying that this is the magic bullet that'll bring all the new employees back and hold on to the employees you have. And yet they mentioned 2 or 3 states that have defined benefits plans like you want, and they're hemorrhaging people faster than we are in Alaska, which is, come on, this is not the magic bullet.
But Michael, here's the thing on the fiscal side. There's still no fiscal note.
Yeah.
There's still no fiscal note on defined benefits. There wasn't a fiscal note last year. The one they got there was, but the one they got they didn't like because it said it increased the deficit. So Giesel and others just sort of dismissed that fiscal note and said, "Oh no, we're working on another." By the end, there still wasn't one. There isn't one now. These are the same people, the people pushing this bill without a fiscal note are the same people who are complaining about the governor's holding on to the wage study, right? That the governor has the wage study, but he's not giving it out, they claim. And so, he's artificially, tilting the playing field by not giving out the wage study. They've had a whole year. The proponents of defined benefits have had a whole year to do this fiscal note, and they haven't done it. And it's still not done. Now, Chuck, and what that does is give Chuck Kopp and Giesel the ability to say, "Oh, I know we haven't done it yet, but when it comes, we think it's going to say this and say that, and so it's all okay."
This is the Cliff Grow. This is going to save you money comment on the program. Oh, we're going to actually save money on. Show me on this napkin how that's going to work out.
Just show me the numbers. Give me a spreadsheet. I'll run them. If you're right, if that's what the calculations show, fine, then that point goes off the table. But the fact you haven't given it to me, the fact you haven't published those numbers in over a year since this started, the fact you haven't given it to me, the fact the only numbers out there are the ones that you didn't like, so you dismissed it. The fact you haven't shown me the numbers over that entire year makes me a little skeptical of what those numbers are going to show. And once again, it's just fiscally irresponsible to be going down this road, especially without a fiscal note. But even if we had a fiscal note, if it showed a deficit, we don't have the money. And to be pushing forward on these spending programs without talking at least at the same time about revenues, how you're going to pay for them. But to be pushing forward on these spending programs is just fiscally irresponsible. They all the legislators like to claim that, they're fiscally responsible. They know what they're doing. They're looking out for Alaska's best interests. No, they're not. They're looking out for the beneficiaries of the spending. They're not looking out for Alaskans' interests. running us into a deficit, forcing us to do stupid things down the road, like, taxing the oil companies more than the right number from a gross standpoint, forcing us to tax Alaskans more than we should be, is stupid. We need to make these judgments about what we're doing at the time we're doing them, as opposed to, passing a spending bill and then putting our backs against the wall on the revenue side down the road and saying, oh, well, we'll get to the revenue someday.
Right.
It's just not fiscally responsible. It's not sustainable. It's not good policy. It's not good anything. It's not good for Alaskans. It's not good for all it is doing is not good for the state's overall well-being. All it's doing is putting a bunch of money that we don't know yet where we're going to get it from, and we don't know the impacts of that, the adverse impacts of that.
We don't know
putting
exactly
a bunch of money
much.
in certain people's hands.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how much. We just know it's going to be a gob, right? I mean, that's the thing. We still don't even know. Right?
Well, we've got the fiscal note on HB 69, and it's huge.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about defined benefits, but yeah, exactly. We still don't know where it is. And, Brad, I said it earlier during the break before we came on that I'm starting to think that maybe maybe there's a cadre out there that understands all of a sudden, or maybe they knew this from the beginning, that there's not enough money, but they said, well, we'll just run on all these things. We'll run on pumping up the BSA. We'll run on defined benefits. We'll run on these programs. We know there's not enough money for it, but we'll just lay it all at the governor's feet. That's really one of the only explanations for rushing HB 69 through the whole thing that they got here, that they want to lay it at the governor's feet. The governor, is going to veto it. And then they could say, look, we tried, but it's, tall man bad. That I'm starting to wonder if that's the kabuki theater we're dealing with.
Could be, but they're not doing their constituents. They're not doing the ones they claim to be helping any good in that regard. And they're giving the governor a free talking point. The governor can bounce it back by saying, look, you have no revenues to cover this. And in the case of defined benefits, you have no fiscal note even to tell us how much it's going to be. You're running us into the ditch fiscally. You're being fiscally irresponsible. That's should be the governor's response to all this. And they're just giving him that free pass on that. I mean, to most Alaska families, that makes sense. Look, if you don't have the revenues to cover it, then why are you voting for the spending? If we don't have in our household the revenues to cover the vacation to Hawaii or to wherever we want to go, we don't take it. We don't spend the money until we have the revenues. And I think that's a powerful talking point that they're giving the governor. And and they're not doing their constituents. They're not doing the interests that they claim to be representing any good, because they're just running them into a wall.
We can get into that in the next segment with the whole Zach Fields thing. But, hey, don't worry. Scooter Kendall, he wrote an opinion piece, said he's a fiscal conservative, but he believes that all these things need to be. I don't know if you caught that opinion piece in the ADN. Hey, I'm a fiscal conservative, but, and, again, goes on to say, we really need to educate, education, and, everything. I mean, it's all about constituencies. Who's getting paid? Follow the money.
And if you're a fiscal conservative and you want to advocate for K through 12, fine, do it. But do it in a fiscally conservative way. Talk about where the revenues are going to come from. Pass the revenues at least at the same time. Advance the revenues to pay for this stuff at least at the same time as you're advancing the spending bill. That's what a fiscal conservative does.
Yeah.
Fiscal conservative doesn't lead with spending and say, hey, we'll catch up with revenue somewhere down the road. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. How do you pay for it? Big question, still no answer as to how you pay for all this. Nobody has a talking point. Go ahead. Final thought.
How do you pay for it? And then who pays for it? Once you know how you pay for it, then you know who's paying for it. And then you can discuss whether it's reasonable. It's a reasonable approach to be taking money out of those people's pockets to advance the other side's interests. I mean, that's part of what you get when you get the how do you pay for it. You get the who pays for it at the same time, and then you can have an honest discussion about whether it's good policy. pushing forward on the spending and not on the revenues. Just
Right, exactly. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. Number 3, the PFD. Oh, wait, what? Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. Was it Zen Kelly asserted last night in the KPBSD? There was a school board meeting last night with like 130 people on the Zoom call. They asserted last night that HB 69 has policy and is fiscally responsible. Saying it so is not making it so.
fine.
There's a cadre of people out there that are just like, oh, it's fine. But the whole thing is, the whole answer to this, and not to get too far down into the weeds on HB 69 specifically, but the answer is always just give us the money. Just shut up and give us the money. We'll figure out the policy later. The policy is what's creating part of the problem. If you don't work on both of these things together, history shows that if we just shut up and give you the money and you'll get to the other part later, you never get to the other part. And again, how do you pay for it? Who pays for it? No answer. Crickets, 100% crickets on this, Brad.
Yeah, show me the T chart. Show me here's your spending over here. Show me the incoming. Show me the revenues over here that's paying for the spending that you've got that's paying for the liabilities you're creating through the spending. Just show me the T chart and show me how it's fiscal. That'll show me how it's fiscally responsible. They can't do that because they don't have the revenues. I mean, even if they wipe out the PFD, they don't have the revenues to pay for this over the 10-year period, to pay for, and this isn't just a one-time deal, folks. This is $330 million in the first year. That's sort of the buy-in cost, right? That's, you've gone to the auto dealer and he says, oh, it's only $330 million down. Don't look at the back end of this thing.
Don't look at what the ultimate cost is. It's only, you can afford it. It's only $300 million a month. You can afford it.
It's, I mean, and that's what they're trying to sell it as, but it's a bill that sets up a procedure, sets up a statutory formula that grows and grows and grows and grows and grows and grows till at the end of the 10-year period, it's $1 billion. So when you do your T chart, when you show me the liability and show me the assets that are the income that's gonna offset that spending, show me $1 billion. Show me what grows into $1 billion at the same time as we've got production taxes, a big chunk of the revenue to the state going down by 30% over that 10-year period. Tell me how this balances out. Show me the T chart where it balances out. And they can't.
They can't. Yeah, no, that's the problem. They just can't. I'm sorry. I don't understand the question. Right? I'm sorry.
I know it's fiscally responsible, but I don't understand what T charts are, and I don't
understand the question. What are you trying to say? This whole thing is just, it's astonishing to watch, but this is where we're at right now. This is fiscal reality in the state of Alaska. And that's the thing. They're ignoring everything else.
It's fiscal fantasy. I mean, for Scott Kendall to go out and argue that he's a fiscal conservative.
I'm a fiscal conservative. I was like, wait, who wrote this? Scott Kendall? Yeah, okay, never mind, Scooter. I don't think you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means, right? I mean, it's, I'm a fiscal conservative. Really? Is that but that's the thing. That phrase is getting thrown around a lot. And I don't know if you caught Rob Myers's article in The Watchman talking about where we are politically in the state of Alaska, but he takes a knife to that. And he's like, there's no, most of the people in this state are not fiscally conservative. And that's part of the problem. We've gotten into this big spending habit, and it's everything to protect it. Jeannie was talking about, again, the Zoom meeting for, here we go, 128 Zoom viewers watching the KPBSD meeting last night. Lots of condemnation for critics of school spending. And of course, no shortage of platitudes. Everything that I've seen, all the commentary on this is that it's all emotional. Oh, it's for the children, and we need the spending. How do we pay? It doesn't matter. We just need to pay. But they're failing right now with the money where it doesn't matter. It's because you're not giving them enough. But wait, we gave them a lot back in 2015. No, it doesn't matter. There's no self-analysis on any of this.
Yeah. And no fiscal analysis whatsoever. We'll get into this deeper into the next segment, but it's also these same people, the House majority, that's pushing this bill, pushing the K through 12 bill, right? And they said no on oil taxes. No, we're not interested in oil taxes. We're not interested in taking on oil taxes. We don't want to do that. So how do you ever make this balance? How do you ever make this proposal out there balance? You're not even trying. It's just spend it all, and then we'll figure out later what the hell we're going to do having done that. No, that's not how a fiscally responsible state works.
Yeah, no. We'll pass it, and then we'll see what's in it. Right?
There you go. The Nancy Pelosi view.
We'll pass it. We had to pass it to figure out how much it was going to cost and what was in it. I'm just like, what? That's not how it's supposed to. But okay. You do you. Here we go. Jumping back in.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Oh, man. Number 3 is the PFD. Do you even PFD, bro? Zach Fields wrote a piece. And again, it was about the supersized. We got all these things we need to spend this money on, and we can't afford to give you. In fact, one of his lines was, we wasted 3.8. How did he put it? We wasted 3.8 billion in spending by giving PFDs out, like it was a huge waste. I was just like, what? The what? That's exactly what he actually laid it out and said, this is what we spent it on. And it was a huge waste to do it. We can't fund PFD needs and also pay large PFDs. So the last 5 years, we've squandered 3.8 billion on PFDs. We squandered it. Your money. We squandered your money by giving your money to you. A portion of it, not even all of it, just some of it. We could have done so much better. We know better than you how you should spend. If we give it to you, you squander it. That's just the height of arrogance here, Brad.
Yeah. So Zach Fields' piece is sort of the takeoff of my point, which is that the PFD is in a squeeze play from both the left, Zach Fields, and the right. Zach Fields' op-ed is just horrible. The title of it is "The Reality is We Can't Fund Alaska's Needs and Also Pay Large PFDs." And now the definition, by the way, the definition of large PFDs is anything over $1,000. Used to be anything over $1,750 or anything over $1,500. Now large PFDs, it's changed the terminology, do policy by changing the terminology. Now it's anything over $1,000 is a large PFD. But what Fields is saying is, look, we need to take to take the money out of the PFD and transfer it over. We need to treat it like just another CBR, a bunch of money we can play with. Take the money out and transfer it over to spending. There's nothing in here in this piece. There's nothing in anything Zach Fields has ever said that recognizes who he's taking the money from. He's taking the money from middle and lower income Alaska families. He's not taking it from the top 20% in terms of share of income, significant share of income. He's not taking it from non-residents. He's not taking it from the oil companies. He's taking it from middle and lower income Alaska families. And he's essentially saying we need to tax middle and lower income Alaska families to pay for this spending. Zach Fields also says, in conjunction with Andy Josephson, as part of the House majority, we don't want to tax the oil companies. We don't want them to pay their fair share. We don't want to go fix SB 21, the problems that SB 21 is showing as it ages. We don't want to fix them. We just want to keep taking money from middle and lower income Alaska families because it's easiest to do that. Because the subtext is because it's easiest to do that because they don't send lobbyists down here. They don't make big campaign donations. They don't bother us in our offices. They don't, send hordes of workers down here to have, performative art on the front steps of the Capitol. It's easiest to take it from working middle and lower income Alaska families because they're working. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to just get through life. And they don't bother us as much. So what we've done is we found the soft spot in the fence, and we're just taking as much out of that soft spot in the fence as we can. But it's not just Zach Fields. Zach Fields is a big problem. Andy Josephson is a big problem. They are not responsible. They're not fiscally responsible. They are taking the money they're taking the money in a way that has the largest adverse impact on the overall Alaska economy and is by far the costliest to Alaska families.
And their constituencies are the ones that are being disproportionately affected by this, right? I mean, Zach Fields represents a big chunk of the lower income group in the Anchorage area, and yet he's the one that they're advocating taking a lot of that money from. I mean,
when you start digging into Fields' district as it's currently constructed, it's really a bunch of limousine liberals. It's really people who are wealthy, live close to downtown, but live in the wealthy areas close to downtown. And so it's more that he does have a poverty section in his district, but it's much more people who say that they want to do good things. They want to increase K through 12, but they don't want to pay for it. And so Zach Fields is responding to that by saying, okay, well, let me spend, and I'll find a way to spend that doesn't take it out of your pocket. And you can praise me for all this good I'm doing for the spending, and it's not coming out of your pocket. So you can continue to support me, continue to give me donations. Oil taxes. When you have people who knee-jerk against fixing the Hillcorp loophole, there's nobody and say, oh, well, we don't want to give any more revenue. Well, look, the spending's already there. The governor's already signed the spending. We're already in deficit. We have already set up all these spending programs. They're not going away. We tried that in 2019, didn't happen. Governor hasn't tried again. They're not going away. So we've got these spending programs. We've got an existing deficit. Oil taxes would help fix that. And by helping to fix that, would reduce the pressure on the PFD, would make the ability to hold the PFD a lot easier because we'd be paying for that spending that's already there. I'm not talking about the additional K through 12. I'm not talking about defined benefits. I'm just talking about paying for the deficit that's already there. That would help fix that by reforming oil taxes to get back to what we thought we were passing in 2013 and 2014. When people on the right opposed that, they're pushing PFD cuts. And they're pushing us into they're pushing the state into a situation because there's nothing left. We've got the spending already. We've got a deficit already. And if you can't reform oil taxes and do other things that increase alternative revenues to PFD cuts, you're just putting more and more pressure on the PFD. So the PFD's caught in this squeeze play. It's caught in this squeeze play from the left by Zach Fields and others saying, oh, we got to spend, and the PFD's bad. We've got to spend, and so we'll just take it out of the PFD. And we've got people on the right saying, well, yeah, spending's there, but I don't want to use these revenue sources for this, that, or the other reason to pay for it. So the only thing that is left when the legislature gets to the end of the day is the PFD. The PFD's caught in this squeeze play from the left and the right. And they're middle income families are the ones, middle income families, which is like 60%. I mean, by the time you take lower middle, and upper middle, like 60% of the population, middle income families are the ones that are being squeezed. And that's and the legislature's doing that. My point is, from both the left, from Zach Fields, and from the right, from legislators on the right who are just having these knee-jerk reactions to fixing oil taxes and closing the Hillcorp loophole.
Brad, we're down to the last 2 minutes here, so I'll give you a chance to summate on everything today. But I mean, I think it comes back to our same mantra of, how do you pay for it? Who pays? And why can't we live within our means? I mean, I don't know if I summated it properly, but that's pretty much the big three things that we keep talking about here. And it's of all things, whether it's the spending on the defined benefits in the schools, whether it's proper management of the PFD and not spending twice as much on the management fees as other funds are doing. There's a million things out there, but nobody wants to talk about the other things.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about them, and nobody wants to do the analysis. Nobody wants to do the spreadsheets. They all want to talk about them, but nobody wants to do the calculations, because they know that the calculations would disprove what they're talking about. And that's true on the left in terms of K through 12 spending, this pie in the sky K through 12 spending, and it's true on the right in terms of oil taxes and this knee jerk on oil taxes that we've got going on the right, because they haven't looked at the spreadsheets. They haven't done the analysis of what is happening with oil tax revenues in this new decade that we've gotten into with SB 21. The problem is not as much the failure to do the analysis. People who are just shooting off their mouths without doing the numbers. The problem is as much that as it is the policies the policy roads that we're going down.
Well, everything we're seeing is being driven by emotion. Like you said, they don't want to do the spreadsheets. They don't want to look at reality. They don't want to look at the fiscal note. They don't want to ask the hard question of who pays or how do we pay for it. They just want the spending because emotionally we need it.
Or on the right, they just want the no taxes. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that we need the taxes to restore to get a share of the increased production. Doesn't matter. They just want no taxes, period. Right. Statement.
Yeah.
Well, the PFD takes the hit.
Yeah. So you're getting taxed already. Anyway, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad, thank you so much.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, out of time. Hour 2 dead ahead. Buckle up. You're going to want to hear this. And Becky Schwanke just dropped the big bomb in the chat room. She says, wait till you'll see their ads to the health budget at today's closeouts in the House. Oh, Lord. I mean, because again, this was the next phase of the attack was the healthcare cuts, because they're starting to close out things. They're trying to close that $2 trillion budget gap at the federal level. And so they're going to stop paying for a lot of the Medicaid things. And you could see the states already, we're going to have to pay for all this. We're going to have to. No, you just shut it off. Shut it off. We don't want to take the money. Shut it off. Find a way around it. If the federal government can't fund it, then shut it off. And here's where we are. Here's where we are right now. This is madness at this point.
It is, Michael. And it's madness because it's madness for a lot of reasons. But yeah, okay. So the healthcare budgets, that's going to be yet another spending category. And that's going to be yet another problem and yet another hit on the PFD. We wonder why middle income, and you and I've done the analysis. You and I have talked about the analysis. It's middle and lower income Alaska families that are doing the out migration. The top 20% is actually growing in the state. The number of top 20% households in the state is actually growing. It's middle and income Alaska families that are leaving the state. We wonder why that is. Well, we're taxing them. We're taxing them through PFD cuts. We're taking income out of their pockets so that the top 20% non-residents and oil companies don't have to pay. We're hitting middle income Alaska families hardest. And the economics of staying here just aren't working for them anymore. And they're leaving. But the economics of being in the top 20%, since you don't have to pay for any of this, since it's being funded entirely by middle and lower income Alaska families, the economics of being in the top 20% in Alaska are great. So we're getting more and more and more of those.
It's the reason for the inflow of the top 20% and the retired population, while the working class population is exiting the state. And again, this creates what we talked about earlier, kind of that doom loop of there's a smaller and smaller pool of people to draw from who are actually paying for that. And eventually it's just going to be paid. Here's the thing. When the PFD's gone, and Zach Fields said the quiet part out loud, we're going to get into this in the next segment, but he said, while most Alaskans recognize, he's talking about PFDs, if we paid a $1,400 PFD, that would decimate basic services and we'd have to pass new taxes. And he says, while most Alaskans recognize we'll have to generate new revenue at some point to fund basic services, which basically they're going to have taxes. They know it. They're talking about it now. You know, you've been slamming me and Brad and everybody else for talking about, hey, taxes are coming. And we should have a discussion about what's the best form of tax for that, because otherwise it's going to get thrust down our throats. And everybody's like, la, 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 la. They're talking about it now. They're talking about it out in the open. The PFD will be gone. And then they'll come to you and go, oh, man, it's so sad when free rides die hard, but now you're going to have to pay, sugar lips. Right?
Yeah, after the top 20% non-resident oil companies had the free ride all those years by being able to push the burden off to middle and lower income Alaska families. Look, if there's one thing that maybe is the theme of today, is look at the damn spreadsheets. I mean, Becky's right, others are right. When you look at the spreadsheets on K through 12, when you look at the spreadsheets on defined benefits, when you look at the spreadsheets on healthcare, they just don't work. Increased spending on healthcare, they just don't work because we've not set up the revenues to be able to pay for it. We're just plunging ourselves like Thelma and Louise. We're plunging ourselves off the cliff with nothing set up underneath. But on the right, look at the damn spreadsheets. Also, look at the damn spreadsheets on oil taxes. Look at the damn spreadsheets on what our take of the gross has been. Look at the damn spreadsheets on what's happening to revenues from production taxes as production volumes are going up. Look at the damn spreadsheets, and you will see the problem that is being created later in life in SB 21 by all of the things that we sprinkled in there. There's a problem in terms of revenues not rising, state revenues not rising in the same way as production taxes or production volumes are rising. Look at the damn spreadsheets. It's not appropriate for the right to complain about the left, increasing spending without having revenues. It's not appropriate for the right when the right won't even look at the damn spreadsheets, their own damn spreadsheets, and figure out what's going on with oil tax revenues.
It's not appropriate. And Brad got all silent for a minute. It's not appropriate.
Well, I was thinking about the FCC for a moment.
Yeah, no, we're on Facebook now, mother. Anyway, it's it's the whole thing is astonishing to watch. Like you said, there's plenty of blame to go around on the left and the right, and we could name everything that's been happening. But we literally have two groups in this state now. It's not Democrats and Republicans. It's not left versus right. It's not even conservative versus liberal. It is big government spend at any cost versus smallest government possible people. That's what we have left. And the problem is the smallest government possible people, they're a minor minority at this point.
But Michael, all taxes are an issue. The smallest government possible people are using that knee jerk about taxes, about revenues to overlook what's going on, what's truly going on with oil taxes, what's truly going on with the way SB 21 is operating. I view myself as a small government person. But a small government person at least looks at the revenue sources and sees whether the revenue sources that you're relying on, that you're using, are producing reasonable results.
Brad, we got to go. I'll see you later, my friend. Thanks so much for coming on board. We're out of time. Folks, the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Let's do it.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the program for this beautiful Tuesday. It's wow. Man. It's a tough day sometimes when you got to deal with some of the things that we just went through. It's kind of crazy to watch what's happening in this state, and that we've got a whole bunch of folks on the left and on the right who've gotten so emotionally tied up in a lot of this stuff that they can't. It just seems like that there's no analytical thought to this. And I know that, we've talked about how there is no political will to cut back. I know how Brad has said that, we really should just stop talking about cuts at all, because it's a false narrative, because there's no way to do it. But I keep coming back to it, man. We've got to live within our means. And I know it's hard because, again, he's right. There is no political will. There is no political will to make that happen, which is not just unfortunate. It's criminal, quite honestly. And yet we've got more coming up. Rebecca Schwanke, Representative Schwanke, was in the chat room, and she made a comment which you didn't hear if you're on the radio, because we were talking about it during the commercial break. But at the end of the segment there with Brad, she said, wait till you see their ads, the legislature. Wait till you see their ads to the health budget at today's closeout in the House. Because that's the next step. That's the next tranche of spending. That's the next angle of their attack. Is, they're gonna push for bigger school spending. They're gonna push for defined benefits spending, which, even though, again, Brad was right, we have no fiscal note. We don't really know what the ultimate cost is going to be. It's going to be a lot. But now they're going to add more to the health budget because Orange Man bad, right? Because, he's cutting $2 trillion out of the federal budget, and we can't. Well, we've got to step up and do. This was the whole Gary Stevens, Bryce Edgman letter that went out to the congressional delegation. Oh, don't let him cut because, because we've created a dependency welfare state, and we're so enamored with it and we're so baked into it that we just don't know what to do on our own. Yeah, Rob says analytical thought is so 1950s. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%. It's so 1950s. We just need to do it all right now because. And then we get these people who come on board. Sorry, I'm just laughing at this point. People who just come on board and they start going over and over that we should just be spending it. We should just be spending it no matter what. Doesn't matter what it costs. Doesn't matter what you need. Doesn't matter what is yours by right, but that we should just spend it just because. And forget about, again, forget about policy. Forget about changing it. Forget about self-analysis as to like, why, how did we get here? What's going on with this? How does this work? And I'm talking specifically at this point, there was 2 opinion pieces that came out over the weekend. And one is from Scott Kendall, who you know as the brain trust behind the Alaskans for Better elections, the ranked choice voting, the guy who's out there at every turn trying to keep people like Lisa Murkowski in office. And he was part of the Bill Walker cadre and the inner circle of Bill Walker. I love, by the way, how this opinion piece in the bio section, it says he's an attorney of private practice who he previously served as chief of staff to Bill Walker. It mentions nothing about his role as the brainchild behind ballot measure number 2 and the ranked choice voting or any of that. No, this is something totally different. But when you've got people like Scott Kendall starting out his opinion piece with the following: I have always been a fiscal conservative. You're like, what? Who wrote this again? What? Scott get this? What? He is immediately, the whole thing is immediately suspect. Again, repeating some of the same old tired and true half-truths that we've heard in the past. When has debating the proper funding levels for our schools become a political blood sport? It's beyond this. This is such a rhetorical device. Just to watch it and to read it is just astonishing. It is such a rhetorical. It is beyond dispute that over the past decade, we failed to increase education funding to keep pace with inflation. Well, no, it's not beyond dispute, which is why some people are disputing it. Since 2010, prices have risen 40%, but funding for education has risen only 7%. Okay, so if you're talking about BSA, the BSA part of the increase, then that part is true. Again, a half-truth. And going all the way back to 2010 is an interesting choice because you could see that. Anyway, if you go back 20 years, well, you could see that with both the BSA and the one-time funding, which they don't count as an increase. They don't count that. See, that's the thing. The math is hard for the crowd who are pro-education. Apparently, they need some remedial math because they keep ignoring all the one-time funding that went into it. They only look at the BSA. You're right. The funding increase for the BSA has been very slight over the last 20 years, 15 years, 30 years. Notice again how he only went back 14 years. He didn't go back the full 20. But I digress. Because the one-time funding included with the BSA shows a 35% increase in education. Whoa, but inflation's gone up 40%, so we're still behind. Okay. All right. Well, if you want to talk about an educational increase, the one thing we can't talk about is tying it to inflation automatically, where we don't have a discussion and it just locks us in. We should have learned, not that we have learned, but we should have learned that you can't just set the government on autopilot. You can't just set it and forget it. Oh, we'll just put an automatic increase in there and it'll be fine. Because what happens is there are things that happen beyond our control. We can't plan necessarily for the future. We should be revisiting this every year, every 2 years, every 4 years, whatever it is. We can't just set an automatic increase in there that automatically just pumps it up every year moving forward. That's how you get government waste and inefficiency. But that's what they want. Not only do they want a bill in there that increases the BSA by something like $600 million in 3 years, it then goes up by 55 to 60, $65 million a year, and increasing every year thereafter because it's pegged to inflation. Every year. Brad's right. At the end of 10 years, we're now spending the cost of this one bill alone, an additional $1 billion on education. By the way, we're already spending $1.2 billion on. So it would now be $2.3 billion on education. For a student population that is projected to continue to decline. So fewer students, but double the money. We failed to fund our schools. It's no wonder that test scores of Alaska students have continued to slide lower. Yet we know that per student funding is not necessarily attributable to the outcome. Places like Mississippi, which has some of the lowest per student spending, has seen the greatest lift in academic achievement because they changed the way that they did business. And since Scott was a fan of going back to 2010, go back to 2015, when we were spending more than any other state in the nation on a per capita basis. And where were we then? Oh, we were still in the toilet. Oh, we were still down at the bottom for academic achievement. This is not fundamentally a money problem. This is a process problem. This is something is fundamentally broken, and we can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. He goes on to say many political insiders say we shouldn't increase education funding until Alaska schools show better performance. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is, if you want increased funding, you need to show me on paper what your plan is to increase that performance. They're not even asking for, we'll wait and see. They're saying, what is your policy? What we need to at least have a discussion about policy. And they're like, no, shut up. Give us our money. And this is where we're at. Then he tries to compare the funding. This is what I love. Then he tries to compare the funding to prisons, which I think is apropos. For better student outcomes, let's fund our schools like we fund our prisons. Well, because, technically, I guess I'm getting Josie the Outlaw vibes. If you don't know who Josie the Outlaw is on Facebook or on YouTube, you're missing out. She hasn't posted in a long time, but she had a video about schools being prisons that was this definitely smacks of that right now. We should fund our schools like we fund our prisons. Well, why don't we just follow all the prison guidelines at this point for the kids that are out there? It's amazing. But not surprising, coming from Scooter Kendall, his brand, I've always been a fiscal conservative. If this is his brand of fiscal conservative, if this is what a fiscal conservative looks like, this explains it all. This explains everything that's wrong with the state of Alaska. If this is a fiscal conservative. Because nowhere in there does it talk about living within our means. Nowhere in there does it talk about shrinking the size and scope of government down to match the revenues. This is all about pay for the one thing that I believe in and everything else can go. If that's the brand of fiscal conservatism that we're talking about, it's no wonder that we're at where we're at in this. Right? This is not a shocking surprise at this point. If this is where we're at, if that is what social conservatism looks like, that explains everything. It's ironic that right next to this article in the ADN, there's another most read by subscribers. Murkowski said she's taking her concerns about federal workforce cuts in Alaska to the White House. Good luck with that, sister. Because you got somebody who is actually making cuts and bringing us to live within our means. And she's another fiscal conservative. Same brand, same branch, same flavor. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show continues. We got more coming up. Chris Story at the end of the hour. Up next, Zach Fields tells you what a waste it is to give you your money. Yes, they're going to waste it. That's up next, The Michael Duke Show.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break. Apparently I said something wrong, which is not surprising. Sometimes you say the wrong thing when you meant something else. Let me go. I'm posting this Scooter Kendall article up so you can go read it for yourself. Brian said, I think you meant fiscal. What did I say? Did I not say fiscal? What did I say? Financially conservative? What did I say? Good thing you're just a radio show host. Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing, Harold. It's a good thing I'm not as smart as you because otherwise I could be dangerous. Absolutely be dangerous. Let's see. You mean the same Scott Kendall that lied about less? Yes, that's exactly, I'm scrolling backwards. Yep. Scrolling backwards. Okay. Doom hour has passed, says Brian. Oh, we could bring the Doom hour back. I mean, I could bring Doom in at any time. But I mean, at some point, you just, at what point do you just get the popcorn out and enjoy the ride? Right. Yep, this roller coaster's going down, but we're in the back and we can see it. Let's just get some popcorn out and watch it crash. I mean, at some point, you're just going to be like, well, we tried. Sorry. There you go. Julie says, that letter does not speak for us. What a mess. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it, but yeah, it's, yeah. Their handlers won't let them fix the budget, says Henry. Who are their handlers, Henry? I mean, why are we ascribing some mystical handlers to it? It's just their choice. I don't think they have any kind of mystical handlers in the background. I think it's just that's the choices that they're making. I don't think that there's anything beyond that. It shows Brian or Kevin McCabe says it shows the legislature's resistance to programmed fund increases, which in large part is why we are in trouble right now. I think he's talking about the lack of increase in the BSA funding. Is that what you're talking about, Kevin? You can clarify that if I'm misquoting you on that, but I'm sure that's where it is. By the way, says Naresh, one BSA dollar is worth 257,000 actual dollars. So 680 BSA dollars proposed by Senate Finance is 175 million. Some in the House want $1,000 BSA. That's 257 million, and on and on and on. Yeah, exactly. It's not just a single dollar. It has the ramifications. All right. I'm scrolling down here. In our schools, we don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars every year to fix the healthcare issues for each student. DOC has the most unhealthy population group in the state. Well, that's true, but hey, he wants don't give Scott any ideas. That's where he wants to go. The 2017 statute, 70% of the classroom repeal was started under Walker. Logic was local control. Yeah, we see how well that worked out for us. Oh, I said social conservative. I appreciate that. Thank you, Brian. I said social conservative when I meant fiscal conservative. My bad. My bad. All right. That's it. I'm all caught up. Losing their jobs. These are fake jobs. No, but I do love it when they talk about we're going to be cutting 374 teaching positions. And then they're like, yeah, but how many people are actually going to get fired? Well, there's going to be a handful because we've got 290 vacant positions and then some other people that will move around. And, but it's always it's always the worst doom and gloom, worst case. We're going to cut music and gifted and talented programs instead of, any kind of redundancy or anything else. It's astonishing to watch. All right, here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right. So I read both of these opinion pieces back to back. And, I was looking for the duct tape to make sure that blood doesn't shoot out of my eyes and everything after I read these opinion pieces, because I'm just like, what? So again, I started out with the Scott Kendall opinion piece. For better outcomes, let's fund our schools like we fund our prisons, which seems like that's a little redundant because anyway, so that was the first piece. And then I went on to the piece from Zach Fields, which said the reality is we can't fund Alaska's needs and also pay a large PFD. Now, they've toned it down. It used to be supersized PFD or a mega PFD. That's back when we wanted just the statutory amount, right? Those are supersized and mega. Anything over $1,500 was a supersize. Now it's we can't pay a large PFD because their number, the goalposts have moved. And we talked about this at the time. I mean, like we told you, they're going to move the goalposts, folks. It should be $3,500, but they're going to move it down to $2,000, $1,500. And then when that's all set, then they'll move the goalposts again. And what are they doing? Now it's from a mega sized or large, extra large, supersized PFD, the Big Mac of PFDs, to now we're getting the dollar menu. We also can't pay large PFDs, which is anything over $1,000 is a large PFD. Okay. All right. Okay. And so Zach Fields gets into this. Now, again, it's astonishing to me because there's a good part of his constituency, and I mentioned this with Brad, and then he looked at some of the demographic breakdown in Zach Fields' community, and there's a chunk of limousine liberals and kind of the upper echelon top 20% in his district, and that must be who he's kowtowing to, because he's certainly not helping the lower income folks. He's got a big chunk of lower income folks in his district, and you'd think that he would be immediately in favor of the PFD to help those people. But again, you have to kind of put yourself in their place and in their minds, and in their minds, you're only helping them if you're providing government programs for them. You're not helping them by giving them access to their own money or letting them pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. Only with their confident, thoughtful guidance can these people be pulled out of poverty. Only with the helping hand of government can we raise the only that way can we make it happen. But again, the headline reads, the reality is we can't fund Alaska's needs and also pay large PFDs. So he goes on to talk about, and again, he's already previewing and premiering the next tranche of their spending call. He immediately starts talking about the $1 billion in Medicaid expenses that they say are going to be shifted to the state. Although the state doesn't have the money. I mean, if we don't have the money and they don't have the money, then, there's an argument to close some programs there at that point. But I digress. And So he starts with that. It's impossible to pay large PFD and meet our constitutional responsibility of funding public schools, period. So there's your trade-off. There's your trade-off right there. This doesn't mention anything about defined benefits. Doesn't mention anything about any other form of spending, although he does throw the $1 billion in Medicaid expenses that they're talking about could come down on the state, right? He goes on to talk about how oil prices have hovered around $75 a barrel. And he said at that price level, it's possible to restore $1,000 in BSA education funding, address the needs of safety, and pay $1,000 PFD. But again, that's assuming that the oil's going to remain around $75 a barrel. Remember what we talked about earlier in the year, month and a half ago, was that this drill baby drill proposal that the president is pushing is great for America. It's great for energy independence and national security and everything else. It doesn't do great for Alaska because, again, our whole economy is dependent on oil. And when they do this broad-based, then the oil price craters. And at $75 a barrel, we may be doing okay, but what happens when it hits 50? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But you can't continue to bet on the IFCOM and think it's all going to be okay. We must restore school funding to get our economy back on track. How does that work? How does restoring school funding get our economy back on track? Again, it's just a throwaway rhetorical line that sounds good with no analytical. How does restoring school funding get our economy back on track? It gets the economies of the education industry back on track. Is it all about the public sector doing okay versus the private sector? Then he goes on to say, restoring $1,000 per student only represents about 60% of education funding that's been cut over the last decade. What? What? That's been cut over the last decade? Now, are you talking about hypothetical cuts that were cuts to proposed increases? Are you talking about, because we spent $175 million last year in one-time funding. It was like the largest one-time funding increase. It was equivalent of $600 BSA increase in a single year. On top of the hundreds of millions of dollars we spent in the previous year. What? But this is where he really shows his true colors. In recent days, the co-chairs of the Senate Finance Committee introduced legislation resetting the PFD formula to pay a $1,400 PFD this year. That would cost $269 million more than a $1,000 PFD and make it impossible to fund schools adequately. Paying a $1,400 PFD would require decimating basic services and passing new taxes. This is where he says the quiet part out loud. While most Alaskans recognize we'll have to generate new revenue at some point to fund basic services, i.e., we know we're going to have taxes, it's broadly unpopular to defund services like schools while imposing new taxes to inflate the PFD. You're taking the PFD. But here's where it gets nasty. For the last decade, the legislature has paid out large, sometimes massive, mega-sized, super-sized PFDs. In 22, the legislature spent $2 billion on a $3,284 PFD. On 2023, they spent $881 million on a $1,312 PFD. In 2024, the legislature spent $914 million on a $1,700 PFD. And here's the money quote. In the last 5 years, we've squandered $3.8 billion on PFDs. It's your money. We squandered $3.8 billion by giving people their own money. The government's been taking a larger and larger slice of it. Bigger and bigger. All the time. 50-50 is where we started. Oh, there's 60. Then it was like 70. Then it was 75. And now last year, 75-25 is our fiscal plan. And now we're moving the needle and the goalposts again, like we were talking about earlier, to $1,000 per person. Because all that money above $1,000, that's how he gets that $3.8 billion. He basically is saying we should have just been paying $1,000 a year for the last 5 years. We squandered $3.8 billion on PFDs. Then he goes on to say, in the meantime, here's what we haven't done. And he goes on to list all these government programs, including the school funding and hydroelectric projects and rail belt projects and all these other things. We could have easily modernized and done this and drive down the prices and do all these other kind of things if only we had done it. He is stricken bigly. He is in stage 4 of the politician's disease. We know better than you how to spend your money. Now, and again, we squandered it by giving it to the people and allowing the people to decide what their priorities were. Because we should all live in a dependency society where only the government has control of that. And if there's a problem, then we look to government to fix it. That one sentence alone is so shocking, and nobody will call him on it. I'll call him on it. Maybe there'll be another talk show host or something, but no news media outlet is going to say, well, sir, you said that we squandered $3.8 billion on PFDs, giving the money to the people. Did you mean that they're squandering it, that they're not fiscally responsible for their, pot and kettle and all that? Legislature being fiscally responsible. No news media outlet is going to call him on that. I very seriously doubt that there's anybody out there that, because most of the news media read that and go, yeah, that's because it's right up their alley. It's right up their political bent. We've squandered $3.8 billion on PFDs. I guess it's good to know how you really feel about us there, Zach. How you really feel about the people and their own decision-making process. That by giving us our own money, because that's what it is, it's our owner's share of the money. It's what you allowed us to have when you were supposed to give us half of it, but now you've given us 20%. We squandered it by not taking more. The arrogance of that statement right there should be enough for all of you right there. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break. This... Guys, this article is, it's so astonishing. You go out and read this article. You read it. I just posted it up in the chat room there. You can go read it for yourself. Tim says, I'm so sorry, Tim. Tim says, I love listening to the show, but it only pisses me off. Why can't we spend what we can afford like most households in the state or figure out a logical way to pay for it? Tim, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm oh, we have such wise and benevolent rulers, says Fat Ray. I'm scrolling down here. This may be a stupid question, said Cindy, but where exactly are the school districts spending the one-time funding? Well, you know that one-time funding that they got last year, the Anchorage School District, they didn't spend it at all. They held on to it till this year. Now they're going to use it to close part of their deficit for this year, but they, yeah. Okay. Where were we? We have let's see. That's Les Guerra's old district. There hasn't been a conservative in that seat in decades, says Chris. Yeah, I know. But I mean, he's again saying the quiet part out loud. What about our constitutional responsibility to fund education good enough to actually teach our children to read and write? Yeah, I mean, that's a question. I'm reading through some of this stuff. And Randy wants Zach Fields to talk about a Hammond bond. Oh, Randy. I love you, brother, but seriously. The state has taken more than half the PFD. Yes, I know. And they're lamenting the fact that they didn't take more. They're lamenting the fact that they didn't take more. It was crisis. It was a waste. Okay. No, let me go over here and do this right here. We'll get see if we can get him on the phone. Hey, look at that.
Good morning, Michael.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Fantastic. How about you today?
I'm doing okay. It's Monday. What are you gonna do? So
no, it's actually Tuesday.
It's been Monday since yesterday, my friend. Monday since yesterday.
Monday's a state of mind, my friend.
Yes,
it's a state of mind.
I know, and I keep trying to move to a different state, but it just won't let me out. What's our topic for today, sir?
Well, I had, it's interesting. I've been preoccupied all morning, and so I don't have anything. And the reason I set out in my library like normal to, read and consume coffee and, have my hour of power. And I keep getting bombarded with messages from people who've opened their tax bills and are outraged. And so that's going to consume their property tax bills. That's consumed my morning. I thought, well, I don't know. We could talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. If we want to talk about that,
right.
that's I'm. You know what? This is your segment. I'll just let you talk about whatever you want to talk about. After I just discovered that that we just squandered $3.8 billion of PFDs by giving it to people. That we squandered people getting their PFD. You know what? My life is complete at this point. I understand. We just squandered it because we didn't give it all to the government. That's why we squandered it. So
yeah, that's a wasted opportunity. It sounds like.
Yeah, we should have just
go to waste.
We should have just given it all to the government, and it would have been much better. They know better than us how we should spend that money, Chris. Why are you fighting on this fair tax thing? Don't you know that they need that money, and they should be getting all that money because they will spend it more wisely than we will. So
for sure, maybe we should increase. Maybe we need to flip this on its head and just you keep 10% of what you earn and give 90 to the government.
Oh, that's probably a good idea. I probably should do that. No, yeah,
self-tithing.
Yeah, exactly. Should do that. All right, we're gonna jump into this here. Ask Chris about his 2025 property tax assessment. All right, here we go. Chris Story. Our guest, the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. You always all ready to do this. One final segment. It's not going to be as soothing as you'd hoped, but it will be interesting because we're going to talk about the fair tax. The fair tax. Yes, Chris hates children. That's why he wants to stop giving money to the government. Here we go. Let's do it.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Enemy. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right, we're back, getting ready to do it. Chris Story, our guest, the man from Homer, who comes on board every week, usually dealing in positivity and pottery and all kinds of stuff. Today, he's dealing in property taxes. And we were going to do some positivity, and he said he was trying to lay it out there, and he was trying to come up with a good topic, and but he said he just got inundated with messages and emails about people opening up their tax bills because it's property tax season. And Chris, it's on your mind. It's obviously hot and heavy. You've been talking about the fair tax. People are kind of outraged. Just in the chat room, somebody said, my taxes went up from $3,900 to $4,200. That's over 20% of my current income. Another one says, my property tax bill increased the value of my property by $10,000 this year. It's just going up and up and up, and if your mill rate doesn't go up, then your valuation goes up. There's never a downward side on any of this stuff. What are your thoughts here?
Good morning, Michael. And that's just it exactly. Be it 10,000. I've had people that have approached. They've had $120,000 increase over the last 2 cycles. I think this is a really. I'm actually pleased. So I said, that I've been inundated with messages, and I want more. So I want this to be a bit of an all call, and I want to be further inundated. If you're on the Kenai Peninsula and your taxes have gone up, I want to hear from you. And most importantly, I want your borough assembly to hear from you. So we can appeal till our, cows come home. You can appeal. You can rely upon the goodness of the assessor's office to hear your appeal. And they do everything they can to try to quash the appeal before you get to the Board of Adjustment. And they might throw you a little scrap here or there. But it's enough. I've done this for a quarter of a century, Michael. I've only fought my own tax bill twice in these 25 years. I've only fought my own tax bill twice. But I've spent countless hours for hundreds of clients and people that aren't even clients in attempts to help justify and rectify their tax bill. And it's enough. I think we need to collectively decide that we're going to stop taxing unrealized gains. And until we just recognize that's what this is, that's what our assessment process is, then if we don't agree on that, and I think we do, and again, I made this point last week on my own show, Michael, that not one person that's argued against this, and there's been a couple, one quite vociferously was Bill Smith. He used to call himself Citizen Smith. He's not a Homer resident. He lives in the Catchment City and in a very small, very underdeveloped property, and his tax bill is probably quite negligible. He took me to task on this very publicly, but not once in his piece did he say that I'm wrong, that this is taxation on unrealized gains. And so if we can just accept that that's what this is, then I think we'll get a momentum and build up. But it's not enough just to call your local realtor, your friend, and say, hey, help me fight this year. Because it's going on and on and on. And last year, if you won a little bit, trust me, they're coming back for it this year in the appeal process. If you last year's appeal, they're getting you this year.
Right.
Sure.
There'll be some punitive measures that are going to be if you call them on the carpet in year 1, by year 2 or 3, you'll definitely feel the pain.
We'll talk about punitive, Michael. Last year, I appealed my own house. It's the first time I've ever appealed my own primary residence ever. I've been a property owner here for 30 years. It's the first time ever that I've appealed my own house. And not only did they reject my logic and my expertise, that's okay, fine. But they noticed that I paved my driveway since last they were here, and said, well, we're not going to add it this year because we don't want this to look like we're, being punitive. So, but it will be applied next year. So when I open my tax bill, I haven't seen it yet, but when we check the mail and undoubtedly get it, and I'm preparing myself that I will be paying for this improvement upon my driveway for years and years and years to come. And it's just, I've just had enough. So I'm trying to start a revolution, but people are lining up. People want to help and ask, well, what can we do to help? Well, the number one thing you can do is call your assembly person, man or woman, and say, we need to stop taxing unrealized gains. And if they hear a tsunami of voices, when this ordinance gets to the agenda, they'll support it. If they don't hear from you, it's to the commenter in your Facebook chat there who said something about why does Chris hate children? That's what's going to happen. Hey, we need the money. Okay, you may be right. Story's right. Okay, this is taxation on unrealized gains. But so what? That's how we need the money. They need to hear from more than me. They need to hear from all of us. It needs to be a tsunami. And that starts with a T, by the way, Michael, if you're writing this down. Tsunami starts with a T.
Chris in the chat room says his property tax assessment went up 24%. Lisa and Gary in Fairbanks said the FNSB is taxing people out of their homes. Every year they go up like clockwork. And that's, it's right. It's happening every year. I mean, everywhere you go, the assessments continue to raise. Sometimes the mill rate continues to raise. Even when the mill rate drops, the assessments raise. So you end up paying more. And it's just this ever vociferous, it's inexorable that they're just coming for more and more.
Where does the money go? To your point about the permanent fund, if it's spent by the government or by the people, who's going to spend it best? So in other words, if we save on the Kenai Peninsula, let's just pick a number, and I don't know what the number would actually be, if we're able to claw back the assessed values to create a taxable value based on the 2018 assessments, if we're able to do that, let's just say it's $1 million that the people are able to save in their property tax bill. So we're not going from something to zero. We're going from something higher to something less. And so if we're able to claw back to 2018 assessed values to create our taxable value and freeze it there, let's just say it's $1 million that the people save this year. Where does it go? Does it disappear? Does it all get sucked out into vacations in Hawaii? No, it's going to be spent, my opinion, hyper local. And I've talked to economists, I've talked to people that understand how money is spent. It will be spent locally. And guess what? Every dollar on the Kenai Peninsula Borough spent it is taxed. It is subject to sales tax. We create jobs with those dollars. We support retailers and local service providers. The money will stay here and get recirculated and retaxed.
Well, we know economists talk about, and in the private economy versus money spent by the government versus money spent in private hands, we know that the number of times it turns in the economy is like 6 and 7 to 1. Is 6 times in the private economy, 7 times in the private economy. It turns 1 time when government spends it because of the inefficiencies and everything else. So it actually does better for the economy that money should be in private hands. Not to mention the fact, as you said, that anywhere that it's spent, that money is also being taxed at 3, 6, 9%, whatever it is in your local tax jurisdiction. So this is not, it's not like they're losing out on everything. They're still going to get that slice of the pie. But you're right. This taxing on unrealized gains is, it's mad. And that's what this is. It's taxing it on unrealized gains.
And Governor DeSantis of Florida has recently come out and said the same thing, and that there's an effort in Florida to do something about the same problem that we're facing here, which is overtaxing the people. And to his point, it's not going to the state government. It's going to the local government. So guess what? That means, and this is the good news, this is the feel-good portion of the show today, you have total control over it. The assembly isn't some far-off. You remember when Mark Begich became senator and suddenly he was more Washingtonian than he was Alaskan, as happens to almost all senators. But he so much so that when Mark Begich was voted out of office, he stayed in D.C. because he didn't want his son to have to change schools. He was no longer Alaskan. Guess what? The assembly is Alaskan. The assembly is your neighbors. The assembly, Kelly Cooper, for example, here in Homer, what a great citizen. She runs a great business in Coop's Coffee. She's the first one to stand up and raise money for charities and support local endeavors. She's somebody you can talk to. You can go call her. You can call James Blaisden in Soldana. You can call all the assembly people one at a time and just let them know, hey, This is taxation on unrealized gains. We need to stop it. You have total control over this because the taxable value is set by the borough. Okay, state mandates that the boroughs and the assessors assess at true and fair market value as best they can. We know you cannot actually test fair market value until you have a buyer and seller and meeting of the minds and a mutual accepted offer. So, all right, they do the best they can to get to an assessed value. We then set a taxable value that is capped. So that's what I'm looking to control, is not rewrite state government, but take total control over our local tax program. We have control over it, and our assembly is incredibly local and very reachable.
And we have an opportunity here to, again, if as you mentioned earlier, was that we have the ability to create a tax haven down here,
yes,
in the Kenai Peninsula Borough. If we did something like this, if we could lock the valuation into the purchase price, then we would have a tremendous opportunity to entice more people down here, because they know that in the next 25 or 30 years, they wouldn't be valued out of their home.
And one point that was made by Citizen Smith is that it's not fair to people that are buying new homes, new people to the area. It's not fair to them. But actually, he misunderstands the intent here. The intent is actually to set a stable, known playing field. And I'm sorry, but if you are buying a home today, let's say at $550,000, trust me, you're going to be relieved to know that next year it won't be assessed at $650 and $675 and thereafter. So he's using that, it isn't fair argument, because he doesn't have an actual argument to make against the notion that this is taxation on unrealized gains. And so he's trying to just create a bit of a not class warfare, but a bit of warfare between the new people and the old people that have been here for a long time. And the truth of it is, even if you're a multi-millionaire moving to this area, you're going to be relieved to know that your $1 million home isn't going to be assessed at $2 million next year or in 5 years.
Well, you hope. I mean, that's the plan. If we can get it done, if we can get that done,
we could do this.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
So what final thoughts here down to the last 60, 70 seconds here? Final thoughts on this. What do we need to do? Give us our exhortation here.
Open your tax bill as quickly as possible. Determine what the increase is, and look at it over the last 5 years. You can go to the borough website and look at your tax history for the last 5-10 years, and reach out to. I would love to hear from you at 299-7653. But most importantly, reach out to your assembly and say it's time for a fair tax.
All right. So reach out to your assembly members, especially if you live on the KPB. Nothing saying you couldn't do this in the Fairbanks area as well, but down here on the KPB, reach out to your assembly members and tell them no taxation on unrealized gains. You want a fair tax. Chris Story, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you coming on board. We'll hear you today at 1 p.m., yeah?
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much, my friends. Folks, we're out of time for today. We got to go. Tomorrow, we've got Rob Myers on in hour 2. We'll see you. Okay. All right, my friends. Well, we got to go. We are going to move on for today. I just want it to stop being Monday. That's what I want. I just want it to stop being Monday. All right, we got to go. We will see you guys tomorrow. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. We'll see you then. Have a good day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.